What is up, guys? Aksis here, and today we are taking a look at the Icebreaker exotic sniper rifle in the Wrath of the Machine raid on hard mode. Now, the Icebreaker was recently reintroduced into Destiny with the Dawning live event. The Icebreaker is one of the most unique weapons in all of Destiny. It's a sniper rifle that does a ton of damage and has 6 rounds in the magazine. However, you can't actually reload this weapon, and it has no reserve ammunition. Going over a secondary ammo box on the ground will do absolutely nothing. Instead, this weapon recharges its ammunition slowly over time. That creates a very interesting dynamic when you're using the Icebreaker, because on the one hand, you will never be completely screwed by RNG and have 0 ammo for this gun for an entire encounter. You have technically infinite ammunition. On the other hand, there'll be times when you're waiting for this gun to slowly recharge its ammunition when the floor is covered with those green secondary ammo boxes. So, how is the Icebreaker in the Wrath of the Machine raid? Is it worth giving up your exotic slot to this weapon? Well, we're going to go over how the Icebreaker performs in all of the different encounters of the Wrath of the Machine, and then at the end of the video talk about its overall ranking. Starting out here with the first opening encounter of Wrath of the Machine. Now, in this encounter, it's perfectly acceptable. It's very good when a voltage eater comes around. It can do a lot of damage against that, and it's pretty decent when Vosik is actually able to damage. It's not actually so good. In fact, no sniper rifle is really actually that good against the normal adds. I'm sure most of you guys know that the normal Siva adds are notoriously annoying to get headshots on. You shoot them directly in the head and it just does normal body shot damage. You kind of have to shoot them like in the neck. It's very frustrating, and so any sniper rifle when you're trying to deal with normal adds isn't going to be great. Now, in this opening Vosik encounter, however, although it is good against Vosik, it's an extremely high damage sniper rifle. In this encounter, Vosik just decides not to face you half the time, and then, you know, what can you do? Actually, the Galahorn is pretty much the king for this encounter. You really don't have to worry about that at all. You just shoot him. But all in all, the Icebreaker is still definitely above average, probably a 6.5 to 7 out of 10 in this opening encounter. Moving on, you're then going to follow Vosik inside and face him a second time for the first real encounter of the Wrath of the Machine. Now, in this encounter, the main thing you're going to have to deal with is adds. A lot of adds. And is the Icebreaker any good against them? Well, it's actually pretty average. We've already mentioned that a sniper rifle isn't actually the best at taking down these tons of adds. This sniper rifle does have a slight advantage over other sniper rifles because of the exotic perk called Icebreaker. So if you kill an enemy with the Icebreaker sniper rifle, it will kind of explode outwards, dealing damage to nearby enemies, stunning them, preventing them from shooting you for a little bit. That is definitely better than, you know, the average sniper rifle. It's kind of like a pseudo Firefly perk where you don't need to get a headshot to activate it. But because it is relatively challenging to get headshots on enemies with a high zoom sniper like this one in this encounter, and then when you do get a headshot, you're actually punished for doing so because you create the annoying Siva nanite swarms, this weapon just isn't that good against the massive amount of adds in this encounter. But you're likely not worried about that too much because you're using a sniper rifle to damage Vosik. So, how good is this sniper against a damage phase of Vosik? Well, let's test it out. And you'll see that for this test, I shot these 6 rounds of the Icebreaker right away, and then I switched to a primary weapon. The simple reason being is because that's how everyone is going to use the Icebreaker. No one is just going to sit there and do 0 damage waiting for the rounds to recharge. You're going to switch to another weapon, and then when the Icebreaker has some ammo back in the reserve, you switch back to it. So that's how I did the test. Now with all that, I was able to deal 222,331 damage in one Vosik encounter. Now that's pretty good, but exactly how good is it? Well, let's compare it to probably its biggest competitor with the Black Spindle. So, we restarted this encounter, I pulled out my Black Spindle, and we did another Vosik damage phase. Now, I will admit this was a pretty average damage phase with the Black Spindle. I definitely ended up missing a few times. Vosik was really loving to duck and dip and dive around, but I was gonna maybe redo this because I thought, oh my goodness, I'm missing a few times, I might as well get a perfect round, but even with me getting a very average damage phase in, I did 258,216 damage. So, even with an average Black Spindle round, I was still able to out-damage the Icebreaker. So, what does this mean for the Icebreaker? I mean, the Black Spindle clearly out-damages it. Does it mean the Icebreaker is trash in this encounter? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say so. The thing about the Icebreaker is that it pounds 6 very powerful rounds very quickly into an enemy boss, and at that point it's sitting real high on the damage output scale. But then you start to recharge and then it just drops drastically. You're likely going to be able to out damage or come extremely close with a normal sniper rifle. We're talking about the Black Spindle. That is the absolute and undisputed king of sniper rifles in terms of damage output. But even certain legendary sniper rifles like the Ex Machina Raid Sniper Rifle would be able to likely out damage the Icebreaker, and the reason being is because the slow recharge rate is just going to get you in the end when compared to a sniper rifle that can just reload and keep going as long as you have an abundance of ammo to begin with. But again, does that mean the Icebreaker is bad? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say so. The Icebreaker is great as long as you can combine it with a different weapon. Like I was saying before, you can pound out those 6 rounds extremely fast, get a ton of DPS in, and then just switch to a primary. If you have a really high damage dealing primary like the Raid Scout Rifle, where you can just go to town after that point, your DPS is still going to remain very high. The same is true if you have a very good damage dealing heavy weapon. I was using the Raid Machine Gun. With the triple double perk, you can absolutely pump rounds into Vosik, and you'll see me use it when I was just normally trying to complete this raid. I didn't want to use it for the damage test because I wanted the test to be more about the Icebreaker, obviously, than about the Raid Machine Gun. So, with the Icebreaker, if you want it for pure damage output, you're probably better with another sniper rifle. The Black Spindle, if you want to give up your exotic slot to a sniper rifle, definitely. But the Icebreaker is all about versatility, having those guaranteed 6 rounds against Vosik, you know, always having ammo to deal with the monitors and so on. And so therefore, the Icebreaker in this second main Vosik encounter, I would have to rate probably a 7.5 out of 10. If I was going to use a sniper rifle in this encounter, the Icebreaker is definitely one of the better ones. It was very nice recharging my ammo and not having to go and run into the pits of hell amongst all of the 10 hiding splicers to get that secondary ammo. You can definitely do it, but you're putting yourself at risk, especially in hard mode, every time you do it. It was really nice staying back out of the fray and always having ammo when I needed it. Again, for the monitors, for Vosik, for whatever. Now moving on, we have the Siege Engine encounter, and in this encounter, the Icebreaker's trouble with dealing with ads also comes up. I shouldn't say dealing with ads actually, because, you know, if you were fighting Hive in this encounter, and it was easy to get headshots and there's a bunch of knights running around with their massive heads that would just one-shot kill with the Icebreaker, this thing would be fantastic. But it's not. You're fighting the stupid Sivified Fallen that are really annoying to get headshots on in the first place. And there's just so many adds that if you get 6 headshots and even maybe kill a few guys with the Icebreaker exotic perk, there's still a million more adds to come at you. With that being said, there are still definitely some times where the Icebreaker shines against the siege engine itself when you're shooting off its turrets and then you're shooting its crit. Very good to have the Icebreaker there. And also, actually, the Icebreaker was excellent when fighting the Siva spider tank that appears on hard mode. Really good against, you know, taking down the legs, obviously, and dealing a ton of damage to the crit. And again, like, it's those encounters that kind of, it's weird. You'd think, oh, it only has a few encounters where it's good, but the fact that it only has a few encounters where it's good actually is one of the highlights of the Icebreaker. You whip it out when it's good, and then when it's good, it has full ammo, it does a lot of damage very quickly. It's kind of a weird dynamic. If this was any other sniper rifle, if this was the Black Spindle, I probably would be saying, you know, most of the time you're not using it, and then if you run out of ammo when you get to the spider tank, it's completely useless. But again, that is the Icebreaker's highlight. That's why it's good. It's gonna have ammo whenever you bring it out, as long as you're bringing it out every once in a while. But with all that being said, overall in this encounter, I'd have to say a 6 out of 10. Just slightly above average. I can't say that it's so much better than a normal legendary sniper rifle. It is definitely better, but not by much. Now continuing on, we have the Aksis Phase 1 encounter, and in this encounter, there's really no targets that shine when using a sniper rifle. In fact, a shotgun would be so much better in this encounter. You really do just have a bunch of adds, and then you have a Reaver Siva captain that just teleports around when you try to shoot him in the face and has a shield. Like, really not the best target for a sniper rifle. So, you know, the Icebreaker really didn't see too much play. I'd have to say 5 out of 10. Perfectly average in this encounter. You're really going to be using stuff like rocket launchers, like shotguns, so much more efficiently in Aksis Phase 1. That is because Aksis Phase 1 is a little bit of a unique encounter when raid encounters come to mind, but even with that being said, again, the Icebreaker was pretty average. And with that being said, does the Icebreaker have a chance to redeem itself when we continue on to the Aksis Phase 2 encounter? This time, you definitely have a target that shines for sniper rifles with Aksis himself. And in this encounter, the Icebreaker performs a lot better. Yes, it's still not great in the beginning part of Aksis Phase 2, when you're just damaging shanks. Obviously, you don't really need the Icebreaker. You can use it if you want, and yes, it does one-hit kill them. And then when the captains come, it's still not great, but it is absolutely perfect for the type of encounter this is involving Aksis. When Aksis teleports that first time, you get the slam in on him, and he's available to damage, you pump those 6 extremely high damaging rounds right into his head, and then you switch to something else. You can switch to the cannon, which is absolutely perfect. So you damage him with the Icebreaker, you do a ton of damage, you switch to the cannon, you start damaging him, maybe, you know, halfway through he teleports again, you switch back to your Icebreaker, and you have more rounds to damage him. You damage him with the Icebreaker, switch back to the cannon. It works perfectly for the type of gameplay that this encounter entails. There's a lot of times where you aren't able to damage him. You know, you're using the cannon, so you're not using your normal weapons. You're getting in position to be able to slam him if you're empowered, stuff like that. All the while, the Icebreaker is recharging very high damage dealing ammunition, so it absolutely works perfect for this encounter. Now yes, when you do have that third teleportation phase and Aksis just kind of stands there for a while, if you had a Black Spindle, you could absolutely go to town and probably out DPS what you're doing with the Icebreaker. But I do think the Icebreaker kind of makes up for it in its consistency and is able to deal damage through all 3 teleportations. So with all things considered, I'd say that in the Aksis Phase 2 encounter, the Icebreaker is an 8 out of 10. I was very impressed by its performance, but it still isn't the absolute best thing you can use. So, how is the Icebreaker overall throughout the entire Wrath of the Machine raid? Well, I've gotta say, I thought this weapon would be a lot better than it actually was. You know, back in the day when this thing was actually viable and you could use it to your heart's content, it was so damn good. It was one of the best exotics, you know, in vanilla Destiny. It was right up there with the Galahorn. It was so good. And nowadays, there's been a lot of additions to the game. Stuff like the Sleeper Simulant was never there before to kind of compete with it. You know, the Galahorn has been remade, and now you can have access to really powerful legendary sniper rifles like the Ex Machina Raid Sniper Rifle. You know, stuff like Triple Tap wasn't really around when the Icebreaker was shining in vanilla Destiny, and that has pushed the DPS of snipers, just normal legendary snipers, definitely a bit more. So the Icebreaker, again, it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. With that being said, it was still very good. It was definitely above average. And although it's just never going to be able to complete in pure DPS output when compared to other sniper rifles like the Black Spindle, it does have that consistency, that constant recharging ammunition that is so useful in a variety of different circumstances. And it is that interesting dichotomy that I mentioned earlier. There's going to be times when you're not using the Icebreaker and you get completely screwed by ammo and you have zero ammo for your sniper rifle for an entire encounter, and you're like, why didn't I use the Icebreaker? But then there's going to be other times where the ammo is just flowing for whatever reason and you're using a Black Spindle and you get to go to town and your damage output is insane. But with all that being said, I'd have to say that overall, the Icebreaker in the Wrath of the Machine raid, it is probably a 6.5 or 7 out of 10. I want to say 7 out of 10, but if you combine all my rankings so far, I don't think it would add up to a 7 out of 10. So probably, let's cut the difference, a 6.75 out of 10. We'll split the difference there. But wait, I almost forgot something. In Aksis Phase 2, at the very last damage phase, Aksis looked like he was going to kill us all, like we weren't going to be able to DPS him enough in the middle, and actually whipped out the Icebreaker for one last ditch attempt and quick-scoped him in the head for the absolute final damage dealing shot. So, in that respect, I've got to say, Icebreaker, 11 out of 10. There's really no other way to say it other than that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And if you want to be notified of my newest uploads, be sure to press the bell beside subscribe. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.